Hey everyone, welcome to another edition of the Buddy Study Group. And today we are going to talk about a salesperson's favorite things to hear. We're going to talk about objections. And, you all, I know everybody knows we're a brave lot for being in the long-term care industry because I think if there's any line of insurance that is going to elicit objections and a lot of different objections, it's probably long-term care. Now, I may be biased, but I also think I'm right. So I think it's okay to be biased as long as you're right and can back it up. I think even pet insurance has less objections than long-term care insurance, but when you stack it up against some of the major lines of insurance, life, disability, whatever it may be, you just find a lot more objections to long-term care insurance, and there's a number of reasons for that. But also, when you stack it up to like P&C insurance, you may have objections, but it's compulsory or pretty darn close to compulsory to own. So we're kind of on an island and having to overcome a lot of objections with a product that many clients can see a need for. They can see a long-term care need logically, but they're gonna find their way to wriggle out of whatever you may recommend, or at the very least, talk themselves into one objection or another. And I think being a good long-term care specialist not only entails being able to bring interested clients to the finish line, right? People who are already understanding of the need and want long-term care. That can be difficult enough to get people to the finish line, but I think you're also only as good as the amount of cases that you can save or the amount of clients that you can sort of talk out or guide out of whatever objection they've gotten themselves in. So I want to talk about some of the most common objections and just, pieces of the sales process, pieces of being a good long-term care specialist that I think really help you overcome. So I want to start by surveying the room. What are in the chat, or you can unmute and shout them out. What are some of the most common objections that you get when you're selling long-term care insurance to a client or a prospect? I'd love to hear from you. I've got some canned ones, but I want to hear what you guys are commonly running into out there. And if you don't have objections and you're just a superstar, well, you should be leading this study group, that's for sure. Or you have really good lead gen and I want to have a talk with you. You need to speak to my financial advisor, probably the most popular one, and probably the one that even the best specialists struggle with. I like that one. We'll go over that one. I can invest my way to handling this. Yep, kind of, sort of intertwined, right? Um, to both of those. No reply to call or email. Well, that's the simplest. That's an objection to salespeople in general, I would say. Um, Easily the most common one. No reply is kind of a soft objection, right? It's not necessarily I'm holding on to this logical reason and I'm conversing with you, but I'm trying to tell you no. Too expensive. Yep, that's another one I've got on my list. Really good one. I've heard they don't pay out when you need it. Another one I have on my list. Another really, really good one. So these are definitely really good starters. Appreciate you volunteering them. If you've run into any wacky ones, I would love to hear one that I wouldn't have even thought of being on my list. So we can kind of get in the lab and figure out how we would help that person move forward with the case. But you guys nailed a lot of prices go up every year. Yep, that's another one on my list. A really good one. So here's in my notes what I have. So cost is a main objection sort of category. Premiums are too expensive. Um, Prices increase or can increase on my income, which is relatively fixed. I can't deal with that. Um, let's see. I'll never use it is another really common objection I see. It is amazing how nihilistic people can be when you start bringing up long-term care. Oh, I'm just gonna kick the bucket. Oh, I'll jump off a bridge if I ever get to that point where I need care. Well, somebody's gonna have to help you off that bridge if you need long-term care, right? Activities of daily living and such. Um, I would rather die quickly than linger in any sort of care scenario. So I'm just immune to the whole thing. Um, Parents never needed it, right? My family will take care of me. That's another good one. I have voluntold my family to take care of me when I get old. I've signed a waiver on their behalf that says they're going to take care of me. I plan on living, but I'm not paying for it. Uh, the government will cover it. That's kind of an objection that is based in misconception, right? So whether it's Medicare will pay for my care or I am perfectly comfortable spending down all of my assets and qualifying for Medicaid. Um, Self-funding. So we tied the financial advisor piece into that, right? I got to talk to my advisor. I can invest my way out of that. I can um, develop this rainy day fund that will take care of all of that if I need it. Um, if I need to, I'll just sell my house, right? Plenty of that. Like I'll just go super nuclear option. Um, Distrust in insurance in general or long-term care carriers in general is definitely a big one. Like David said, I heard they don't pay out when you need it. They're going to deny my claim. The company might go out of business. Um, I've heard horror stories. My neighbor tried to collect on a long-term care claim, and they were told that their claim was denied. Um, Sometimes complexity can be a little bit of a barrier. Sometimes we actually create that objection ourselves by diving a little too deep into the nuts and bolts, and we end up overwhelming our client. So it's not that clients are born with objections every single time. We could actually implant them with our own process. So that's something we have to do a little bit of auditing on sometimes. Um, let's see, timing. Timing's a great objection. I'm too old, to get something at a reasonable price. I'm too young to be looking at this. I'll wait until I'm older and closer to needing it. Or my financial picture will be much better looking in 10 years. So I'll actually, be able to do something then. And let's see what else. I think beyond outright denial, I don't think many clients and prospects will be so bold um, as to come out and say to you, it won't happen to me without trying to use some sort of logic. My family, passed away early, never needed any care. That's my history. Um, my partner, parents, or spouse needs caregiving right now. I don't need the benefits, but somebody else does. Yeah, that's a pretty good one too, I'm more focused on a current family member or close loved one who needs care, and I'm not thinking about myself. So I think between you guys and what I had on my list, that is a large portion of the objections that we encounter. Part of this is event session, right? But part of this is like, wait, I want to pinpoint in these objections where we look to overcome those objections. And I also want to have a discussion of like, how can we be better at overcoming those objections? Of course, to be in this industry, you got to have pretty thick skin. You have to think of an artful way to not take no for an answer. But I think a lot of that is also rooted in compassion. A lot of that is rooted in empathy, right? So we need to be able to level with the client and where they're coming from, but also help them get out of la la land because I think some of these objections are just insert objection here so that I can put up a wall and protect myself. I think some are real and logical and realistic objections for a client at any point in time. And I think other times it's a defense mechanism, right? And we don't necessarily want to continue to poke somebody who's being offensive or defensive in a way that will make them even more defensive or, worst of all, shut down completely and don't contact me anymore. I know the people on this call. I know y'all aren't doing that. Um, but let's see what we can kind of put our heads together to do to maybe save one more case, overcome one more objection than we did last year, right? I think that's a reasonable metric to look at for this call to try to improve. So, what are the ways we overcome objections? I think we do that by killing objections as early as possible, right? I think one of the ways to overcome your house being infested by bugs is to spray the house for bugs regularly, to keep a clean area, to get to the problem before the problem can arise, right? We are in active mitigation rather than reactive, right? Proactive as opposed to reactive. If we can even run our presentation in a way that swats down objections without having the client present it and feeling shot down, it's almost in their mind as their gears are turning as you're going through the presentation. It's like, oh, here are all my outs just flying out the window, and I didn't necessarily offer them up. So I kind of know that avenue is closed. Um, so I think proactivity, so pre-education is number one. So we talked about some of these things like Medicare and Medicaid will just kind of take care of it for me. I think education to that effect as part of the presentation, and it doesn't have to be this big, long novel, is one of the things that's going to help you really root out that objection outside of the most stubborn folks, right? Understanding that Medicare really doesn't cover long-term care in the way we imagine it, and understanding that we have to significantly impoverish ourselves in most cases to qualify for Medicaid, and understanding that Medicaid really restricts our options of where and how we receive our care, is one of the ways to root out that right away. I think I have really molded my approach around self-funding over the years. And one of the ways to pre-educate and kind of get rid of that objection about I will purely self-fund is, talking about the fact that almost nobody is funding 100% of the cost of care with insurance. Almost nobody. There is a combination of self-funding and insurance from those who are covered. And it's about dialing in what works for you from a budgetary perspective, what you can afford comfortably. I think that really helps put people at ease and help their perspective not feel attacked, right? If I welcome actually self-funding as part of the approach in a holistic long-term care plan, I think that's going to have uh, a positive effect for us. Many of us worry that if we say self-funding is an approach, it's an approach that's used commonly, that people will just feel validated and not feel like they have to talk to you again or talk about long-term care planning again, right? But I think it actually has the opposite approach to say people who are covered are doing a little bit of self-funding and people who are self-funding are doing a little bit of coverage. I think it helps kind of bring people to the middle. as opposed to just giving them an out to go out the door. I need to speak to my financial advisor, be proactively collaborative. All right, that's cool. I would love it if we could all have a call together because what ultimately is going to help me to do my job is to understand your financial picture, your financial range of motion, and if long-term care is a fit given that. And who better to really know that than your financial advisor? And, I want to make sure that your advisor's asking the right things about long-term care. Your advisor wants to know that I am recommending things that fit within your situation. I would not want to recommend anything to you without your advisor who basically works with every other financial vehicle in your life. I need their approval too. So why don't we all just get on a call together, meet each other, and walk through that? Again, none of these kind of uh, tips for overcoming the objection are going to be silver bullets. You're gonna lose some. That's just kind of the nature of the sale itself, right? You're gonna lose some. You're not going to sell everyone. Nobody bats 1,000. 300 gets you into the Hall of Fame. So where can we win that one extra? There are going to be cases where you're going to be proactively collaborative when somebody says, I need to talk to my advisor, and you lose the case. But nothing ventured, nothing gained, right? You're going to have cases where the client says, well, that sounds great. Certainly, if you're coming from a place of being argumentative, you're going to have way less of a likelihood of getting that advisor to the table. But if you establish that rapport, that trust, and I guess just put that client at ease, they're going to feel much more comfortable introducing you to their advisor. So proactivity, pre-education, anything you can throw out there to root out those objections. Let's go through some of the other pieces of the list. Unfortunately, I don't know if there's any way to solve the no reply to call or email. We're trying to figure that out. Um, let's see. We covered self-funding a little bit. Um, claims Claims is interesting. I'd be interested to hear from you all. Is that something that you preempt? Not necessarily on my end would I imagine it as something that I preempt. Maybe talking a little bit about how the claims process works. Maybe in talking about a partner, a close partner like a Mata Senior Care or some other, home health care franchise or any sort of gerontology contact or anyone else you're connected to in caregiving, I think can really help. But Amada, why I bring up Amada a lot in conversations on the group and individual side is because Amada helps with claims activation. And one of the things that they find a lot in assisting clients with claims activation is that many people believe they are on claim, go to Amada to start claims activation, they do a review of the client's situation from a health standpoint, and they find out before they submit the claim that they might be close, but this isn't actually an eligible claim as of yet for the insurance company to approve. The horror stories really come out when people just submit the claim directly to the carrier, believe that they have an eligible claim, and find out that they don't from the insurance company, right? Bad press travels really, really fast. I also think one of the ways you can overcome that is almost every single carrier out there is going to have some sort of claims brag sheet or claims brochure. I think it's important that the client knows that this industry is built on reputation regarding keeping promises, right? So most carriers will be more than willing to brag about their track record in paying claims. So those are pieces that you can share to kind of allay those fears. It might not be enough for everybody, but I think just understanding that if carriers didn't pay claims, there would be a lot less policyholders out there in the world. And, carriers that didn't pay claims on record would eventually crumble, right? And that you work with companies that are built on keeping those promises and paying claims can certainly help. Cultures. I didn't see this one, Belinda, but that was a very, very good one. In my culture, family takes care of family. And I think that's a really hard one to overcome. In my culture, family just takes care of each other. In my girlfriend's family, that's exactly what the culture is like. Children take care of family. And that one is passed down from generation to generation. Generational objections, very, very hard to overcome. I read this in the newspaper, a little bit easier to overcome. I would say there could definitely be some sort of balance in that, right? Like family caregiving is the heart of many cultures, but I also think there are tasks that family members may have to do in your caregiving that they won't be able to perform or be able to perform easily. You might not even want them to perform certain tasks. In some cases, you may need to call in help to take care of certain pieces of your activities of daily living. So don't think of it as um, long-term care insurance and funding professional care is the absence of family caregiving. If you can sort of flip it to, establishing what role you would like your family to play, oftentimes that's not the hands-on nitty-gritty things that none of us want to think about with regard to caregiving. I also think that there's a lot of relationship strain, a lot of burnout, and a lot of putting life on hold to take care of loved ones. And again, even if that's culturally accepted, your family member can help you by overseeing the caregivers. They can help you with some of the lighter hands-on caregiving tasks. They can help you with the shopping. They can help you with laundry, all of the things that, a home health aide might not be able to help with. And in many cases, I've heard in some of the best, home healthcare situations, that caregiver that comes in, even if it's only for an hour a day, almost becomes part of the family themselves, right? And again, this argument is not going to win over everyone. Tradition is a very hard thing to overcome. But I think talking about what role you want that family member to play, or who have you selected in your family to be your caregiver? Do they know of this like responsibility to step up? Because in a family with five kids, who's going to be the one, right? Uh, who's going to be the child that gets to, you know, move to the other coast and start a new life, and who gets to be the child that stays home to take care of you and your spouse? Right? At the very least, even if it's completely against your culture to own long-term care insurance or to pay for any sort of professional caregiving services, you need to have that conversation. Who's it going to be? What is it going to entail? Are they going to live with you? Are you going to live with them? At least having those questions answered is a long-term care plan in itself, right? Plans don't always involve insurance. And at the end of the day, we are focused on making sure people have a plan, right? So prepping them for their family conversation, though it might not win you a sale, it might help a family somewhere down the line in having that sort of transparency, avoiding bad surprises, um, all of that. It allows the family to have a bit of structure to what is normally a very chaotic family situation. And if you can bestow that on them, that's a win in itself too. It's not a monetary win, but at the end of the day, I think it's really, really important to have that conversation, even if it doesn't um, win you the case. Let's see. My partner, parent, or spouse needs caregiving right now. I don't need the benefits, but someone else does, right? That's a pretty good one. And feel free to volunteer anybody if you have an approach that you feel works, but family history is a thing, right? And I know we are built and it is drilled into our minds to talk about the fact that insurance is its cheapest. The younger you are, the healthier you are, right? So if you could be looking into a lens into the future of what it may look like for you at that age. I'm not saying it's guaranteed, but I'm saying that genetics is a pretty grounded discipline of science, and family history of longevity, of caregiving needs, of certain illnesses which can be hereditary, um, is a real thing. And even if your family member is in need of caregiving now, they don't have access to the insurance, right? It is too late, unfortunately, in almost all cases if you're receiving any care of any sort. So that's an important conversation to have. It is, you are watching an instance of too late right in front of you. And even if it was a month before too late, it probably would have been pretty darn expensive from an underwriting standpoint to get that plan. So that's all the more reason to take action while it's cheap, while it's accessible, and while you have a lesson right in front of you of why funding professional care is so important. I think that's just one of the major themes to a lot of these objections is at the end of the day, yeah, insurance is what we do, and it's a big, important part to most people's long-term care plans. But at the end of it all, it's about funding professional care. It's about having access to professional care. It's about having choices. It's about having comfort. It's about having dignity in these long-term care situations. It's about having convenience. It's about having as much independence as you possibly can. Caregiving does allow for that, right? So it's about funding that professional care just as much as it is about holding an insurance policy, right? So I think a tweak in our objectives sometimes can help us be a little bit more able to overcome some of those objections. It's almost like playing hard to get, but it's something you really believe, right? Um, what better way to continue that than to help your family caregiver get a little compensation? Exactly. Yeah, that's a great one, Robert, is that cash indemnity long-term care plans are perfect for scenarios where it's understood in my family, we take care of each other when we have any sort of scenario like this. And it could be that the person you're talking to had to take care of a family member previously. Well, wouldn't it have been nice, even if you were willing and able, and it is culturally coded into your DNA that you're going to take care of your loved ones? Wouldn't you like to have had a little bit of reimbursement for that so that when your caregiving duties were done, you could really get on with resuming, you know, your life with some catch-up money, right? This definitely can hold folks back from a lot of aspects of their own life planning. So a little bit of reimbursement for that is a fantastic thing. I think that's a great recommendation, Robert. That's a great pivot. Um, and yeah, the respite, help to the individual in their mental health. Yep. Legacy planning, it's also big. I mean, hybrid long-term care, guys, is popular for a reason. It helps to naturally overcome a lot of these objections, right? I'm worried that rates will increase. How about guaranteed premiums? I'm worried that I'll never need long-term care and I'll put all this money into a plan and get nothing out of it, right? Well, how about death benefit because you're going to die at some point? And how about return of premium provisions, right? Um, well, yeah, family takes care of family. Well, how about a nice kickback in the form of cash indemnity benefits, right? So checks a lot of boxes of a lot of common objections. So I think one of the themes I had written down here is good product selection can help overcome a ton of objections. and just hearing out those concerns and using that as part of your product selection is fantastic. Worried about rate increases? Well, maybe let's look at a limited pay or single pay plan, right? Pay it all up, according to a sticker price. Chris is saying, I tell people to think about their 80-year-old self and not their current self. 100%. Yeah, for sure. Agreed. Yeah, it's all about helping people get that perspective. And in that case of family takes care of family, or in that case of I have a loved one who needs care right now, they're often the best clients because they are dealing with the fallout, right, of an extended care event. Um, so that will kind of get their gears turning organically. Like, man, is this what it's going to be like for me when I'm older? So, yep, totally agree. Getting them into the perspective of their older self definitely helps. And things like good field underwriting really help to overcome objections because one of the easiest outs that a client can find happens when they are declined for a product. My out is just that they didn't want me. All right, I give up. No, if they don't want me, nobody gets me, right? So I think good field underwriting and being proactive and setting expectations for the planning process keeps the client's head in the game a little bit more. Having backups ready keeps their head in the game a little bit more. Because when their head starts drifting out of the game, they start hatching objections or looking for the first open door that they can walk out of, right? But I also want to make sure that I mention at some point, this all goes back to one of the main things we always talk about with the long-term care planning process. You'll hear the Rhondas and Lindas of the world when they join us on the study group saying, always find out the why behind why the client is talking to you in the first place. Nobody, put leg bindings and handcuffs on them and carried them in like a fish and placed you into my office, right? Nobody forced you to be here. You are here on your own volition. So I would just like to know what sparked your interest in talking about long-term care? What is your greatest concern of an extended care event, and its effect on you and your family, right? And keep that why. Keep that why. It's the most important note you will take, especially in cases where there are objections or it's hard to reconnect with that client because that is something that you use in your follow-up. It's important to me to reach out to you to make sure that we can reconnect because you told me that you want your kids to be able to travel the world and come back and visit and not have to worry about taking care of you. Well, we haven't actually solved that puzzle yet. And I would really like to help you solve that puzzle. It sounded when we talked like it gave you a lot of peace thinking about that sort of future. And I just want to make sure that we can stay connected to get that done, whether it's with me, whether it's in some other way. I want to make sure you're good. I want to make sure you're accomplishing that goal. That is how you get clients back in. That's how you overcome many objections. If a client starts to get cold feet, some sort of defensive objection is going to come up, right? If you bring them back to their why, remember, you're probably getting bogged down by some element of the process, some element of bad news, whatever it may be. You're just getting exhausted by the length of process. Let me ground you by reminding you why we're doing this. This is what you told me as soon as we met, right? So I think finding out the why is another super proactive way to overcome objections, but the proactivity is really the key. If you start closing doors before they can find or are even looking for an open door to kind of leave, I think that's super, super helpful. Answer the questions before the questions even get asked. Um, and I think, access to good resources and the right resources for the moment and for the objection as a whole it's not necessarily that every objection is an indictment on the entire industry or the theory of long-term care insurance or the theory of insurance as a whole. It it may be a preference disguised as an objection, right? I just want to make sure you could read it a couple of ways. I heard long-term care is um not stable and that the premiums increase. That's more of a preference than an objection, right? The client thinks it's an objection because it's based on all that they know, but they're also giving you, the expert, a preference of where to look for plans with stable premiums or the ability to pay them up quickly. So always look out for objections, uh, really preferences disguised as objections. I think that's a super important piece too. And I think I've tried to share this quite a bit, but not being combative is the easiest way to overcome an objection. I mean, even just by characterizing some objections as preferences disguised as objections, you can see that that's like from a non-combative angle. I think the moment you start fighting someone who has an objection, you're giving them, you are actually walking them toward that open door to get out, right? Um, and objections, as I said, can many times be defensive in nature. So you don't want to give a reason for more defense because defensiveness just keeps getting pushed back until the only other defensive answer is to shut down, is to walk away, is to quit, is to stop answering your calls, to stop answering your emails, to unsubscribe from your newsletters, right? That's not what any of us want. So try to always acknowledge that you see their side of things. You can you can even add bullet points to their side because you know what you have to share is logically going to outweigh a lot of that. You still have to let them decide. You will not win them all, but you're going to win even less by fighting. You have good reasons to bring up. They know you have good reasons and good information to bring up. Don't be a combatant, be a consultant. Consultants can empathize, can level with people. You encounter these objections all the time. So you know a lot of people feel this way for one reason or another. However, it was put in their head, level with it. It's the way of the world. If we can see eye to eye, I can understand why you would feel that way. That is like one of the simplest tickets. Just your personality and your bedside manner, so to speak, with how you consult with people on this planning process has so much to do with the amount of cases you win or lose. And in general, just not giving up on them at the end of the day will really turn the people who really care about getting this done, right? Um, think about anything you have been asked to buy over your life that you weren't foaming at the mouth to buy, right? Uh, Sometimes you put up a defensive wall to not do it now, right? I'm going to do it. I'm not doing it now. I'll get my roof fixed next year. Uh, you know, any little tiny, I'll get that will made next year. Uh, you know, 65 is a good age to do this, right? You'll put up walls to not do it now, but were you given a good enough reason to do it now? There were cases where you were given a good enough reason to do something now, be it a discount, um, be it any other reason you could come up with. You were given a good enough reason to do something now, and instead of what you were planning to say, I'll do it in 2 years, 3 years, you did it right away, right? So just think about your own experiences in buying things and being solicited, and where were the good experiences? Where were the bad experiences? The bad experiences were probably some schmuck tried to fight you and wrestle you to the ground to prove they were right. It showed that they didn't care about you. They cared about being right. They cared about winning the arm wrestling match. And they thought if they won the arm wrestling match, you would be under this magic spell and have to buy what they were selling, right? The good experiences was when somebody, a genuine human being, tried to understand you, understand your scenario, and understand if what they were selling was a fit for you. And if it was, they were really kind in walking you through that. But if it was something really important for you to have, they were also persistent in a kind way. So that's how I characterize objections. Take them away before they can get there, but also understand that objections are natural, understand they're rooted in certain psychological properties, and understand that you, as someone who sells things and has things sold to them, have objections that pop up in your own mind. And you probably know why. And you probably know that there are things that can be done to get you to overcome those objections. You just haven't met the right person yet. So hopefully, what we've gone over today will help you to be the right person for even one more customer that's out there. So does anybody, I can't believe it's already quarter of, does anybody have any other interesting objections they have run into that they want to kind of think out together, or anybody else have any other approaches that they'd like to share that work well for certain objections? I know we talk about the self-funding objection as its own sort of study group, so there's a lot of, resources and materials that we have put together for that, but anybody else feel like they've mastered a certain objection? I'll give everybody a minute, but I will also start soft wrapping it up. I hope you guys found that talk valuable. I hope if even just outside of the actual sales tip, insurance tips, whatever they may be, I hope what really kind of rang out for you is just the psychology, just the understanding of who you're sitting across the table from, their real sorts of feelings and mechanisms and idiosyncrasies. I think that's really the key to being a good consultant, is really being able to understand your client and how best to help them. Um, I hope this helps you in a future case, and appreciate the kind words. And I think that'll do it. I think we'll wrap it if nobody has anything to share. Really appreciate y'all being here, and we will see you this time next week. Take care, everyone.